Hey guys, welcome back. If you've ever had trouble having your makeup last as long as you want it to during the day or at night, hopefully this video will give you some tips and tricks so that won't be an issue anymore. Whether you're going for a full glam look so that your makeup will last all evening, all night long, or whether you just have a long work day or a long shopping day, whatever it may be, hopefully this video will help you. I know I've been asked by quite a few of you on my social media how I make my makeup last so long, and I've been asked just by coworkers and friends how I end up looking fresh at the end of the day. Now that's not the case every day because some days I do skip some of these steps, but if you're interested in how to make your makeup last longer, just keep watching. While most of these tips are going to be makeup related, I feel like I really need to mention a couple of skincare related ones because they really have helped me over the past couple of years with having my makeup last longer during the day because they've helped my skin be more regulated. I'm not sure if this makeup lasting issue is more of an oily combination skin issue or if dry skin people have the same problem, but I do know it's an issue for me and I have oily combination skin. It was when I started using a facial oil at night when I started noticing that my skin felt more balanced and more regulated and started producing less oil during the day. So there's a ton of different oils out there. It's really trial and error to see which one works for you because some didn't work for me. Some broke me out. Some just didn't agree with my skin. I personally like maracuja oil and marula oil, but different strokes for different folks, but I would recommend trying that out if you haven't yet. My second skincare related tip is going to be to use a moisturizer in the morning as part of your skincare routine because I feel like a lot of oily combination skin people skip this step thinking it's going to cause them to be oilier during the day, but skipping this step often causes your skin to overcompensate and produce more oil. If you're not doing this, just be sure and get a moisturizer, even a lightweight one that will help hydrate the skin and yet not cause you to overproduce more oil. They make nice gel ones. There's tons of lightweight, oil-free moisturizers out there that can really help your skin during the day. Tip number 3 is to use a primer. There's tons of drugstore primers and higher end primers to choose from. Some that have not worked for me have worked really well for others and vice versa. I went without using a primer for so long thinking they just didn't work for me, and it was because I tried a couple that just weren't compatible with my skin or with the foundations that I was using. And I assumed they were all like that, and they're not. I personally don't really like the ones that are very silicone-y and slippery feeling. I like the ones that feel more like a lotion and sink into my skin. Apply a pea-sized amount. You don't need a lot at all for all over the face, and then let it sit on the face before you apply your foundation so that it has time to do what it needs to do. And now I'll talk about step number 4 while the primer is sinking in. While your facial primer is sinking in before you apply your foundation, what I personally like to do is then apply my eyelid primer, and I highly encourage you to use a primer on your eyelids. It will not only help your eyeshadows to adhere better, but it will help them look better too. The ones that aren't tinted, I find you definitely need to do a soft wash of a neutral eyeshadow before you start going in with color, just to even out any discoloration on your eyelids first. Now, applying a teeny tiny bit of the eyeshadow primer is key, or else they can crease throughout the day. After you apply your eyeshadow primer, then top it with a tiny amount of either translucent powder or neutral eyeshadow. Topping it with a powder product will help it stick to the lid, and it will also give your eyeshadows a smooth canvas to apply to and adhere to. Now, step number 5 is a step that I use if I'm having either a really long day or if I'm using a foundation like Too Faced Born This Way, which I really like, but it doesn't tend to last well on me past maybe 4 or 5 hours. And it just helps the foundation adhere longer and helps keep me shine free longer, so I have to touch up less. So I take a big fluffy brush and then I dip it lightly into a small amount of loose powder, before I apply my foundation, and I dust it over all the areas of my face aside from my under eye area, because I don't want to put powder here before I have put anything else, because it gets very cakey under the area very quickly. So it's a small amount of powder, but what that does is just help create almost another layer of primer for your foundation to adhere to. And again, the key is a very small amount dusted lightly over the face. Otherwise, you can get cakey very quickly. I think a lot of people have tried this before, but they use either a pressed powder and it doesn't work correctly, or they use a translucent loose powder and they use too much and it gets cakey. Again, very small amount. Step number 6 is foundation. And I find using a damp sponge is best, especially if I used the loose powder trick before. And that, again, is not something I do on a daily basis, but for, again, certain types of foundations or special events, I'll use that. I find you don't accentuate any dryness with a sponge. You can use a brush if you do like a brush method. I just find I have to be a little more careful about any texture I may have on my dry areas with a brush. If you're having a really long day and you want your makeup to last, I would steer clear of dewy foundations and semi-matte, demi-matte foundations for this type of a day, unless they claim that they're long wearing. Tarte's Rainforest of the Sea foundation, for instance, gives me that Too Faced Born This Way look, but it lasts longer and it gives me that demi-matte finish. But long wearing foundations are going to be your friend, and you can shear them out and make them more medium coverage with a damp beauty blender. And that's why I like using it. When you use that powder trick before, you need a lot less foundation. There's something that it does to enhance the coverage ability of foundations. So before dotting it all over your face, I would be very careful about the amount you use if you use that powder trick before. You can see how much I have left on my hand when I did that powder trick. I'm going to link some of my favorite foundations that I use when I have a long day and I just want to look really fresh all day long, so you can see those. So for under eye concealer, again, I use a damp sponge. You can use the pointed tip of your big sponge. You can use a small mini sponge, which clearly I use today because it's still dirty. I've shown you guys in plenty of videos how I apply my concealer and top it with translucent powder. But the key there is when you're doing your skincare routine in the morning, hydrating really well under the eye so it has time to sink in. That way your under eye area stays looking good all day long. Sometimes I'll put a couple of layers of under eye cream under my eye. I'll let a layer sink in, then I'll put another layer on after a few minutes. Then I'll go in when I'm doing my makeup with my under eye corrector and then my concealer, and then I'll top it with translucent powder applied with my beauty blender, and then I'll dust away the excess. But I find my concealer can last all day long with this method, and it looks really nice and it never fades away. And of course, that's going to be concealer dependent too. You have to be using the right concealer for you. And again, that's trial and error. So when you're setting your foundation, again, you're going to go back to this damp sponge that you use to apply your foundation. And I typically use the side of the sponge, dip it in your powder, and you can use a ton of powder and just press it all over the face. I don't know why this method works better than using just a regular dry puff, or why it works better than using a big fluffy brush, but it just does. It works so much better at keeping the face shine-free longer, and it looks less cakey than putting the powder on just with a brush. It really just works the powder into the skin so that it makes everything one layer versus dusting it on with a brush. So when you're finished packing your powder on and just pressing it into the skin, then you can dust away any excess with your brush. So at this point, you're going to be looking pretty flat. You've applied the canvas for your color cosmetics, basically, and so your face just looks like a blank canvas. So this is where you're going to go for your bronzer, your contour, your blush, all those fun things. It's the blush that tends to fade on most people. And when I put up my video not too long ago on what I keep in my makeup bag for everyday touch-ups, A few people were surprised that I didn't have blush in that bag, and I just don't find that I have to touch up my blush on a daily basis. I guess it's because of the way I apply the rest of my makeup. And now, no, I don't do all these steps every day. This is for really long days, but even on my regular days, I just don't have to touch up my blush. Now, there are blushes that I prefer because they seem to last longer on me than other blushes. One thing that I find that if you have an extremely long day and you really want your blush to last a long time, using a cream blush underneath the powder products that we applied, or even using a lipstick as a blush, or a lighter formulation like a Clinique Chubby Stick as a blush first before you put on your powder products, that can help. And then putting on a powder blush as your next step can help make that last. My blush brands of choice that I find really last extremely well during the day are Tarte. This is probably my number one. I find that these they don't fade at all during the day on me ever. I feel like I could wear these for 24 hours and they would probably stay the same from morning till night on me, and that's one of the reasons that I'm such a fan of them. The Marc Jacobs Air Blush, they last really well, and Cargo, I find these to be very similar to the Tarte in terms of longevity. These are just my three main favorite blushes to wear on a daily basis. So I guess I do have favorites as far as which blushes last a long time. Those are my preferred. So you guys want to know how my blush stays fresh looking all day, those are the blushes that I pick. At this point, I put on my eyeshadow. I don't do anything special for that other than the eyeshadow primer and top it with powder that I did earlier. If you have watched my videos before, you know I really prefer to line with eyeshadow as liner because I find that it just looks better in terms of getting a more precise line than you can with the tip of a pencil. But I also find that it just lasts longer during the day, because if you're using a pencil and you find that it's fading, if you top it with a little bit of powder shadow, it will help it last longer. And I feel like if you top anything with a shadow, or you just line in general with a shadow, it looks good, it lasts a long time, and that's what I personally do. And I never ever have a problem with any of my eye products fading or smudging or wearing off during the day at all, ever. So for mascara, you can do one of two things. You can use straight up waterproof. Of course, that is going to help your mascara last better all day long. However, it's not really that great to use waterproof mascara every day. That being said, my first coat of mascara is always waterproof because it does hold my curl. I just can't get a non-waterproof mascara to hold the curl in my lashes at all. I just can't. So my first light layer is always waterproof, and on my bottom lashes, it's always waterproof. It just doesn't smudge. And then my second coat is usually non-waterproof. Occasionally it's waterproof. A lot of people reverse that. A lot of people will do the first coat non-waterproof and the second coat waterproof, and it really helps lock in that mascara and keep it from smudging and flaking during the day. If you use waterproof or non-waterproof as your top mascara and you're prone to getting smudges up here like I am, just take a fluffy brush and a little bit of powder, and you can use loose or pressed because I've done it in the middle of the day with my pressed powder before, and just take it and rub it along the tips of your lashes, and it will help lock in that mascara and you won't get those smudges. You can't see the powder on the tips of your lashes. You can do it at the beginning of the day, the middle of the day, whenever, and it works to help lock in the mascara. I would recommend always wearing a lip liner underneath your lipstick, and it does not have to look obvious. More times than not, I use a color that is my lips. I'm always looking for that perfect My Lips lip liner. And the simple reason is, now that I'm older, my lip line is starting to fade a little bit and it looks kind of uneven. And so I really do it more for the definition, but I also bring it to fill in my lips too, and just lightly. I don't even use it really with a heavy hand. I just like to put it there so that my lipstick adheres a little bit better and it gives my lips a little more definition. So this next tip I think can really help a lot of you, especially if you're not a fan of setting sprays. And it's one that I use actually pretty often, not every day, but I've mentioned it in a few of my other videos, so I may sound like a broken record, but I take a soft focusing powder and I just use it as a finishing powder to top over everything that I've done. And it doesn't look cakey. You just take a dense brush. You can take a smaller kabuki brush, a full kabuki brush, and you just start buffing the powder over your finished face. It doesn't wipe away product or anything like that. It just kind of gives you this blurred, soft focus effect. It not only seals in what you've done, but it also just makes your makeup look really good. And I don't really feel like I need a setting spray if I do this. Let's talk lips. We've only done lip liner. A lot of us don't like liquid lipsticks. If you're one that wants to wear just a regular lipstick, this is actually a tip that Brooke gave me before I was even watching any of these YouTube videos at all, and I certainly didn't have a channel. You apply a layer of your lipstick like you normally would, and then you take one ply of a regular tissue and you place it over your lips, and it looks kind of goofy, but that's okay. And then you just take a brush or a puff and you dip it in translucent powder and you put it over your lips, and it helps seal in that lipstick. You can put another layer of lipstick over it if you want, or you can just leave it at that. I find that just topping it with the translucent powder can fade that layer a little bit, so I typically will layer another over it. But it just helps seal in that color. It helps it last a lot longer, especially if you're someone who eats and drinks a lot after you apply your lipstick and talks a lot. I personally am not someone who likes the drying liquid lipsticks. I like the ones that are a little more forgiving with the lip lines, especially if I'm going to have to be wearing it all day. So I look for formulas that top well over themselves, or that will allow me to top them with a lip gloss or lipstick as the day goes on. Smashbox, Marc Jacobs, the NARS Velvet Lip Glides. There's a lot of brands out there, but I typically stay away from the really, really drying ones just because I'm going to have them on for a long time and I really don't want my lips to be very uncomfortable. But whatever you're wearing, just bring it with you during the day, and maybe bring a gloss too so that you can top it with the gloss. The last thing I'm going to mention are setting sprays. You can't have a video that talks about having your makeup last all day long without talking about setting sprays, right? So I have the Urban Decay All Nighter. I'm almost finished with it. I haven't decided if I'm going to repurchase or not. I may get a different one with this one. If you have suggestions for makeup setting sprays that you love that are good for oily combination skin, I would love to hear those in the comment section. But if you have one that you really like, I would highly recommend misting that over your face lightly on a day that you want your makeup to last and look good. If you are a fan of setting sprays, not everybody is. So that again is a personal preference. And that is it for this video. That was a lot of tips, and I think that this video is probably longer than I meant for it to be, but there's a lot of things that go into making your makeup last all day long. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you were able to take something away from it and that it helped you out a little bit and gave you some kind of a tip or trick to do next time you need your makeup to last a little bit longer. Thank you so much for watching. If you're not subscribed to my channel, I would love it if you did so today. I'd love to see you back here on a regular basis. If you're not following me on my social media, I'll put that on the screen and in the description box below. I'm very active on Snapchat, Instagram, and Twitter, and do talk about what goes on in my life on a daily basis. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.